calling the meeting to order in just a minute, if you will just hang tight for the mayor.
Sure, no problem.
Okay.
All right, the room should be soundproof, which is good. All right. How's things up in Frostburg?
Sunny and warm.
It is nice day.
Birds are chirping, flowers are popping up.
Okay.
Okay, you ready?
Let me make sure this is live, and it is 4 o'clock. Okay, good to go.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. This is the March 12, 2024 work session of the Mayor and City Council of the City of Frostburg. And the meeting with roll call whenever you're ready, Liz.
Commissioner Donnie Carter,
Here.
Commissioner Nina Forsyth,
Here.
Commissioner Kevin Grove,
Here.
Commissioner Adam Ritchie,
Here.
Mayor Robert Flanagan.
Here.
Okay, Rich, you were first on the agenda, so if you want to go ahead, we have your presentation up so everyone can see you.
Great. Well, thank you so much for the opportunity. Let me just share my screen for a second as well. As Elizabeth said, we probably have this in front of you. First and foremost, again, it's hard to believe that we're already in mid-March. It's been about 9 weeks so far in the session, and we've reached our halfway point, but it's amazing when we get started how quickly time flies, as they say. Looking at the calendar, as I mentioned a moment ago, we are certainly past the halfway point by a few weeks now, and we are literally on the doorstep of sine dying here in Annapolis in less than 4 weeks. Much has happened. There's a lot to cover. Over the last few weeks, you've been receiving bill reports from me on a weekly basis on what bills we are covering, which ones we're monitoring, which ones we're taking positions on. Now, the last time I looked on our bill report, we were just around shy of 50 pages, and that also includes the cross-filed bills that were cross-filed in the House or Senate or vice versa. But in that 50-page report, there are a handful of bills that we are watching very closely, and some of them are actually moving as we are going to discuss today's agenda. So there's a lot to go over. There's a lot to jam-pack into the time I have with you. But please feel that while this is a very high-level overview, if any of you have questions on what we've done over the last 9 weeks and what we are presenting to see forward over the next 4 weeks, please don't hesitate to email me or contact me. This is the crunch time, as we call it, so the best way to get in touch with me is via text or an email, and I'm happy to respond back to you. I should also note that this is, as I said, the crunch time, so a lot of things are happening very quickly, so there may be just a couple real-time updates that I share with either Elizabeth or Mayor Bob, but clearly anything that passes that we've been watching will be part of our end of session report, and I look forward to sharing that at the end of session and presenting that all to you at the end of April in person at the late April work session. So let me start without further ado where we are at the halfway point, give you some numbers that are somewhat startling, and then just go through the agenda here. We're going to touch on a few high-level items from a policy standpoint that we've been watching for Cumberland. We're going to get into a lot of discussion on the budget. There's been a lot of discussion not only in Annapolis with budget decisions, but the Board of Revenue estimates recently came out. We're going to talk about this highly controversial bill that was heard in the House Ways and Means Committee yesterday, and we'll get into any Q&A that you have. But before we jump into the very beginning, let me just mention a couple dates so that you can kind of see where we are in the totality of the 90-day session and where we stand. So as of today, this marks the 63rd day, and under the 63rd day, this is typically where the standing committees in each chamber provide their committee reports on the bills that they have to date. That will be issued and they'll be published, they'll be on the website, and the reports will be distributed to the various committees. Next week is really going to be a significant point in session, as it always is. It falls on the 69th day of session. This is what's called the crossover date. By the 69th day, if a bill that was originating in either the House or Senate chamber, if that bill has not passed out of its original chamber and over to the opposite chamber before March 18th, that bill is pretty much deemed to be dead at that point in time of session. Typically, any bills that have not passed out of the original chamber and make it over to the opposite chamber after the 18th will typically wind up in what is called the Rules Committee, and it will be up to the Rules Committee to determine whether or not they will allow that bill to move forward for the remainder of session. And typically, it's a large hurdle by anyone that wants to see a bill moved out of that committee. It's sort of like purgatory is the best way I can describe it, where the remainder of the session, whether it be a lobbyist or a sponsor, they'll be working hard to work with the Rules Committee members to try and get that bill on a docket so that hopefully it can make it into the opposite chamber standing committee, have a hearing, and then conduct itself through the second and third reader back over to the original chamber and hopefully meet the finish line before sine die, and the bill can make its way forward for the governor's consideration. So between now and next Monday, there's a lot of bills, a lot of horse trading, as we call it, in Annapolis that is occurring. And I'll get into some of those topics in a moment. But moving forward, just looking at the other significant dates that we have coming up, I mentioned a moment ago where we are with the budget, and we're going to get into the overview. But every 83rd day, constitutionally speaking, in our state constitution, we have to have a budget bill that passes both chambers and is presented to the governor before the week before sine die. We are in that process as we speak. Currently, the Senate last week held their subcommittee reports. The subcommittee reports were then given to the Senate Budget and Taxation Committee for full adoption, which occurred late Friday afternoon. And now the budget is before the Senate floor. And once it reaches the final reading, the bill will then proceed over to the House for consideration. And then finally, last but not least, on April 8th will be the 90th day. We will adjourn sine die at 12 midnight. So we will be going pretty much, as they say, a marathon day. We will start bright and early on that day, and we will have some festivities throughout the day, but mainly it'll be just churning out the sausage, whatever's left in the machine. There's going to be long sessions in both the Senate and the House. And whatever bills that we did not see that made it through crossover, this is where anxious legislators and lobbyists will be desperately trying to get their bill passed before the stroke of midnight. And then before we wrap up on the top, I do want to talk a little bit, if we have some time, about sort of what our post-session wrap-up will look like and what are some of the interim planning that we would like to continue working with Frostburg on as we go into the interim period. There's been a lot of great momentum so far. I'm sure Mayor Bob has shared with you some of the experiences that he's already had in Annapolis, along with meeting with the governor and lieutenant governor. I'd like to continue that momentum on some of the things that we are currently working on for Frostburg, but we'll get into that in a few minutes. But first, let me start really at the very top here, the halfway point. As I mentioned, we met the halfway point about two and a half weeks ago. And to our surprise in Annapolis, we have certainly reached a milestone. Typically, on an average 90-day session, we see about 2,800 bills. At the very top of let's say, a election year, we'll maybe see about 3,000 bills. This is a non-election year, a second year into the first term of the Governor Moore's administration. We are just 60 bills shy of reaching 4,000 bills. That also includes the legislative bond initiatives, which is also called a bond bill. To be hitting almost 4,000 bills is very significant. It's very unheard of. Unfortunately, because of the large number of bills, you're seeing a larger report that typically one would be receiving from us on a weekly basis. This also means there's just a lot of volume happening in Annapolis, and there's a lot to cover. But assure that even though we're seeing close to 4,000 bills, we have been tracking every bill. We've been reading through every bill, and we've been making sure that those bills are part of your weekly reports, and some of those bills we're going to get into right now. So I'm going to just pause for a second. Does anyone have any questions for me before I get into discussing some of the policy and getting into the budget? Any questions for me at this point?
We're all good, Rich, keep going.
Okay, great. Well, first let me start with a few topics that are part of the agenda. Some of these are actually reflective on the governor's priorities and what we listened to during his State of the State, and certainly they are part of his overall budget priorities and priorities for his legislative package. This includes local government bills that we're tracking. Some of these are public safety bills, tourism zone bills, and tax sale bills. So let me just get into a handful of those, and then I will segue into where we are with our operating budget. So first and foremost, let me start with House Bill 243. This is a requested bill by the Department of Housing and Community Development, and the title of the bill is called Property Tax Sale Revisions. If memory serves correctly, last year, both Mayor Bob and Mayor Ray, along with Michael Cohen, we worked very diligently last year on making some changes to property tax sale revisions. We were very successful in that campaign. This year, we're seeing the department come in with a departmental request to talk more about tax sale revisions. This specific bill makes various changes to the state law governing tax sales, specifically relating to properties that local governments are authorized or required to withhold from sale. This also includes the amount that must be paid to redeem a property after a tax sale, and the availability of installment payment plans to redeem owner-occupied residential property. This bill was really stalled about 2.5 weeks ago. As a matter of fact, we thought that this bill didn't have much traction, but within the last 2 weeks, not only have we seen this bill move forward, but it almost passed out of the entire House chamber with basically a non-contentious vote. The bill passed third reader by a vote of 127 to 9, and is now currently over in the Senate, where we're going to be watching this closely. I know this was a bill that we were monitoring for City of Cumberland. In fact, we actually submitted a letter of opposition. There was also some opposition by the Maryland Municipal League and the Maryland Association of Counties. Despite the opposition, this bill is moving forward, and I think part of that is the fact that this is considered a departmental bill from the Housing Community Development, and certainly there has been a support by the governor's office to see this bill pass. So politically, I think there is some movement because of those factors.
What was the nature of the opposition?
All right.
I'm sorry, Nina had a question, Rich.
What was the nature of the opposition?
I think the nature of the opposition, and I'm not sure if Michael Cohen is on the call or if he's in the chamber, but I'm sorry.
He's not.
No, he's not with us. Go ahead.
Okay. I think one of the reasons was the fact that we accomplished some of these tax sale revisions last year, and it just seemed a little premature for us to make changes to the law within less than a year after we had came down to Annapolis and made some success. I cannot speak on, again, my memory's a little hazy, but I cannot remember the reasons for the associations opposing it, but I can tell you last year they were supportive of our tax sale revision bills. So I would imagine, and I'll go back and take a look, but aligning some of the same arguments that we had, where it just didn't seem like this bill was necessary given the fact that we had the changes made successfully last year through both the House and Senate and were passed into law by the governor. I can follow back up though and pull the file jacket if anyone's interested, and I can share with you specifically the opposition of not only the associations, but I do have Michael Cohen's letter, and I can share that after this meeting with the council.
Thanks.
Thank you, Rich.
Sure, no problem. There's a bill that I want to just talk a little bit that's local here for Allegheny County. It's a bill that was introduced by Delegate Jason Buckle and co-sponsored by Delegate Heimbaugh, and that is House Bill 507. The title is Allegheny and Garrett Counties. This is a property income tax credit for construction and purchase of housing. This bill was actually heard in early February, and once again, just like the tax sale legislation, we're seeing this bill really just stalled out for the last few weeks. In fact, the bill was introduced last year. The only change in this year's version versus last year's was that this bill decided not to include Washington County in this legislation. Last year's bill, all that was heard was the first reading and a bill hearing, and the bill pretty much stalled out. And at the time of about a few weeks ago, the same fate of this legislation for this year was certainly meeting that same as the bill prior. However, things change, as I mentioned a moment ago. There's a lot of horse trading that's happening in Annapolis right now, and coincidentally, this piece of legislation is now on a voting list to pass out of the Ways and Means Committee this afternoon. And if the bill makes it out of the Ways and Means Committee, it will go before the full House for consideration and then make its way over potentially to the Senate for consideration. But essentially what this bill does, it would establish a credit against local property tax and state income tax for newly constructed residential real property in both Allegheny and Garrett counties. Allegheny County and Garrett counties and the municipalities within those jurisdictions must grant by law a property tax credit for up to $10,000 against the property tax imposed on an eligible dwelling for up to 5 years if the eligible dwelling meets specific requirements that were in the bill. As I said a moment ago, this bill is now on track to move, and following our presentation today, we will be providing updates on this legislation. This was one of those bills that Mayor Flanagan and Mayor Morris discussed with Delegate Buckle in person when they were visiting Annapolis. This is one of those bills that we are tracking for both you and for Cumberland, and we will be providing updates to see if this bill continues to survive the legislative process over the next couple of days. There's another bill that, a local bill that we're watching as well. This is also sponsored by Delegate Buckle. This is House Bill 787. This is the Allegheny Regional Recreational Economic Development Authority establishment. This bill received some support from Delegate Baker and Delegate Heimbaugh, and that hearing was scheduled on February the 15th. At this point in time, this legislation has not moved since its bill hearing, and it did receive a cross file in the Senate, which was Senate Bill 1134, and that was sponsored by Senator McKay. That bill has basically been held in the Senate Rules Committee, and it has not moved since. As I said a moment ago, neither has Senate AB 7. However, we have talked with Delegate Buckle directly, and we've also talked with his chief of staff, and there's been assurances that this bill may be moving as well. It has not met the vote list yet, but again, we will be watching this closely. This is a bill that would establish, as I said a moment ago, the Allegheny Regional Recreational Economic Development Authority in Allegheny County. The authority must support the development and construction of regional recreational facilities to help benefit both residents and, the economic development in the county. This includes indoor and outdoor athletic fields and other facilities designated for recreational tourism. The authority under this bill would give the discretion to manage appropriated funds for Allegheny County, Cumberland, Frostburg, and the state. It could receive donated services from professionals and supervise, manage, and even terminate staff consultants if necessary. There would be, the authority would consist primarily of both state and local officials or a designee. And by October 31st of 2025 and each following year thereafter, the authority has a mandate to provide a report on all of their activities to the governor and specific legislative committees such as the House Ways and Means Committee and the Senate Budget and Taxation Committee. This bill would take effect on July 1st of this year, but it does have a sunset and would terminate on June 30th of 2029.
I have a question about that one.
Yes, ma'am.
Is there funding for the authority included in the bill?
No.
No.
In terms of state funding for the authority to be
And
created,
kind of like where the funding would come from?
I'm looking up, bear with me, it's a great question. I'm pulling that up now to see where, if there is a funding mechanism, and looking at the fiscal note, it does not see or appear that there is a dedicated funding for this authority.
If I recall correctly, Rich, it says that the entities that make up this authority may contribute funds to the authority, or they may be the recipient of donated or granted funds. So it's
Yes.
creating an authority
And
that's
just to
not going to have any
Just
money.
to also additionally add to what Elizabeth said, the authority may use any funds it receives from either the county, Cumberland, Frostburg, or potentially the state to support the development and construction of those regional recreational facilities. It does not, I'm looking at some additional language here too. It looks like it also says that it does not see, or it does not seem to express specifically any additional funding. There may be some future expectation by the state or local funding, but it does not say specifically, and it doesn't seem to express that in the legislation itself.
Thanks.
It's a great question. And last but not least, this is another bill that came in the fall that we were watching closely for Cumberland and some of the tourism nonprofit organizations in Cumberland, and we brought this to the attention of Mayor Flanagan. This is a bill that was one of the priorities of the Maryland Municipal League. This was Senate Bill 14, which is entitled Tourism Zones. It does have a House cross file, which is 1281. I'll get to that in a second. But this bill would authorize Baltimore City and the municipalities across the state to designate specific and specified tourism zones. It would exempt the gross receipts from any admissions or amusement charges levied by a qualifying tourism enterprise in a tourism zone from admission and amusement taxes, and it would grant property tax credit against the county and municipal real and property taxes for those qualified tourism enterprises located in those zones. The bill would essentially take effect on June 1st of this year, and the real property and the personal property tax credits would be applied to taxable years beginning on June 30th of this year. This is a bill that not only received the support by the Maryland Municipal League, it was also supported by Governor Moore last fall during one of the MML events. It had the testimony from various municipalities along with the Department of Commerce. It was one of the first bills that we actually watched very closely and had one of the first bill hearings. For some reason, the bill was stalled for many weeks, but through the collective efforts of the stakeholders involved, the bill was amended so that not only can Baltimore City and municipalities enjoy this potential piece of legislation, but it's now has expanded to counties as well. And I think through that discussion and collaboration and that change to the bill, we've now seen this legislation move forward. It has received a favorable report out from the Senate Budget and Taxation Committee. It's on the Senate floor right now on second reader, and much like the Delegate Buckles House Bill 507, this House Bill 1281, the cross-file, is currently on for a vote favorably, hopefully, in the House Ways and Means Committee this afternoon.
I have a question about that too.
So there's, yes, ma'am.
Are there any qualifications or guidelines as to what, for municipalities and counties and Baltimore City to use, or can they just decide whatever they want to be a tourism zone? Is it entirely up to that?
Yeah, there are. Yes, that's a great question. So the Baltimore City and the municipalities may provide by law for the duration of the designation and the eligibility criteria to qualify for tourism enterprise. Okay. So yes, the bill leaves it up to the discretion of Baltimore City and the municipalities and now the counties to determine what those qualifiers are.
Okay, so it's the latter. It's that it's entirely up to them. Up to them.
Yes, that's correct.
So it leaves it open-ended for us to make that decision as a, yeah, okay.
These are all great questions. Again, these pieces of legislation are part of your weekly report and will be part of the final report in the next couple of weeks. However, I will be providing updates periodically to Elizabeth and Mayor Bob when we see changes in real time happen, obviously, in the next few weeks. For the other bills that are part of your report, we are watching them. And again, if any of those bills, for whatever reason, do not make it through the next week, we certainly believe that the likelihood of them passing this year are very minimal. But nonetheless, things happen in Annapolis, and we will be watching it very closely.
Okay.
Now, I would like to turn our attention quickly to the budget, because I don't want to take up too much time. I do want to leave some Q&A and talk a little bit about where we are going for in the next months ahead on the interim. As you probably have already read, last week the Board of Revenue's estimates came in for the state, and unfortunately the news about where we stand fiscally in Maryland just continues to get worse. The Maryland Board of Revenue estimates voted last week to lower our state revenue projections for the remainder of this fiscal year by $120 million. The board, as you know, of Board of Revenue estimates consists of the Comptroller, Brooke Learman, Treasurer Derek Davis, and the Budget Secretary, Secretary Helene Brady. In addition to lowering their revenue projections for the state for the remainder of this fiscal year, the BRE also lowered our revenue projections for this coming fiscal year, which starts on July 1st, by $134 million. Again, our forecasts for the next years are trending downward, and that's causing a lot of stress with policymakers in Annapolis, and certainly with the governor, who has said very openly and has been on the record throughout the 18 months that he has been in office, he does not want to raise taxes. He doesn't want to add more to the burdens of Marylanders, particularly during these inflation and fiscal times. But as we continue to trend worse and worse on the revenue estimates, there's going to be some tough decisions that are happening and will be taking place in Annapolis. That could include not just tax increases, but that also could mean budgetary reductions. That could mean cuts to programs and certainly requests for capital improvements. And that could include programs, whether health or human service programs. Everything is on the chopping block, as they say. The unfortunate personal income tax forecast showed a sharp deceleration in withholding of income tax revenues. Again, just looking at where we are, there's not enough personal income tax, and the sales and use tax are also not really showing a lot of growth because people just don't have the means at this stage to be just buying certain goods, and their personal income is not as high as it was due to the inflation that we're seeing nationally. Because of our fiscal downturn and the write-down that we recently saw, it has triggered a very controversial bill in Annapolis. This bill was recently introduced very late in session. In fact, it was not even scheduled for a bill hearing, but when the write-down took place, this bill was activated out of the Rules Committee and received an emergency hearing yesterday. This is a bill that was introduced about 4 years ago by the former majority leader and has been reintroduced by the current majority leader in the House, and it's House Bill 1515. The title of it is called Sales and Use Tax. It's a bill that will essentially impose a tax on all services. There are a few exceptions that are being exempt, but overall, this will universally tax at a 5% taxable rate all services. And when I say all services, this includes everything from business services, excuse me, such as accounting and payroll, consulting services. It could be data and IT services. This also means professional services. This is anything from tax services that we're all doing right now. This is including legal services, informational services. This is anything that's related to sale for advertising space or software or internet subscription sales, travel services. This is anything from tourism to visitor information for sightseeing tours. I mean, this is something that could very much impact the Western Maryland Scenic Railroad. We also are seeing taxable services on leisure and recreational services. This includes fitness, sports centers, gyms, museums even. Building and maintenance services such as residential landscaping services, waste and remediation services, maintenance and repair services. So if you're going to get your watch fixed, or you're going to get some type of repair on your car, all of those services will now be taxed. And the list goes on and on. There's personal care services, like you're getting your nails done or your hair. Let's say you're getting some type of personal service like a pet care or even a funeral services. That's all now looked at being considered on the taxable services that could be passed on this legislation. The hearing was about 3.5, 4 hours yesterday in the Ways and Means Committee. The minority leader, the majority leader, I spoke to him afterwards, and he even said it on the record that while all of these services are looked at to encapsulate and hopefully increase our general fund revenues substantially, he is not adverse to looking at exempting some of these other services out because of just knowing that there are going to be impacts on some of these services that are regressive and are going to be impacting low and income households and are just going to be a negative impact just in general to Maryland residents that are, again, struggling right now due to the inflation nationally. So while everything is being thrown at us on this bill, there seems to be going to be up to lobbyists and certain legislators that are going to be working with the Ways and Means Committee and the Majority Leader to see what services potentially could come out. If you asked me about a week ago if this bill had any real legs to it, I would have said it's in the drawer and it's not moving right now. But within the last week, with our Board of Revenue estimates and the continuing concerns and struggles that the state has from a budgetary standpoint, it's clear that this bill, in some form, is moving forward. It's already had, I said a moment ago, a hearing. I could see this bill, even though it's very late in session, we could still see some form of this bill moving forward, just so that we can offset the deficit that we're faced with right now. That's one of the major bills that we are tracking. I mentioned a moment ago the budget with the Senate had passed last week. There are a few things I'd like just to quickly highlight and then answer any questions you have about that, and then we can get into forecasting for the interim. As I mentioned before, the operation budget, which is Senate Bill 360, that and the Budget Reconciliation Financing Act had also made it through the Senate, and that was Senate Bill 362. Both the general fund balance, we're looking at least $141 million, which is positive. We have preserved about $2.4 billion in cash resources. This includes about $2.3 billion in our rainy day fund. And as I mentioned before, the $141 million, that is in our reserve for general funds. So that's some positive news for at least this year. The proposed budget that was adopted by the Senate also restores some funds for legislative priorities that the governor initially proposed on reducing, which includes about $10 million for community colleges and about $5 million for private colleges. There's also some shifting around of our GO bonds, which are general obligation bonds. The shift for the GO bonds, which is about $130 million of capital projects, frees up more bond capacity for a lot of the legislative priorities in the capital budget. There's a lot of capital bond bill initiatives that are being presented and requested by the legislature. By shifting those GO bonds around, it frees up some additional money for those community projects to actually receive this year's funding. We're also seeing about $4 million in police accountability grants, and there's about $1 million dedicated for food banks, which is great. We've also seen that the governor is now authorized to withdraw about $199 million from the rainy day fund to ensure Medicaid and foster care are adequately funded. In terms of increasing funding for public schools, again, the state has always been very committed to ensuring the investments in public education. The state is supporting public schools with a total of almost $9.1 billion. Aid to both local school systems will increase to an estimated $449 million, which is roughly about 5% increase. And this also includes fully funding all of the fiscal 25 blueprint mandates. The blueprint is the blueprint for Maryland's education, which was passed about 4 years ago. We're also seeing some additional support on the health services. There's a dedicated Medicaid funding totaling $14 billion to allow the state to provide coverage for over 1.6 million residents across Maryland. We're also looking at the budget including nearly $78 million of both state and federal funds to be used for what is called the Summer Electronic Benefits Program. This will provide food benefits during the summer for children who receive free and reduced price meals when they're in school. And we're also looking at, again, some additional support for family services. We're seeing roughly $488 million in new funds being allocated to Childcare scholarship programs. So overall, what the Senate has provided is a very robust and balanced budget that does not include any taxes. Once the budget is adopted by the Senate, again, the House will then take up the budget, and they make some changes to what the Senate has done. If that happens, the Senate will review those decisions and recommendations and will either reject those changes or concur with what the House has done. And that period of time will potentially create what is called a conference committee. The conference committee members are selected by the House and the Senate leadership. And during that designated conference committee, they will iron out any differences they may have with the budget changes from the House. Once that's done, as I said a moment ago, by April 1st, the budget must be fully vetted by both the chambers and proceed up to the governor for his signature. Any questions on some of the highlights from the budget or the House Bill 1515 or the Board of Revenue estimates?
Anybody have questions? Keep rolling, Rich. You're doing good.
Yes. Perfect. Well, that kind of puts us in a very good spot. Hopefully I didn't bore you or make anyone fall asleep up there. But where we are in terms of our agenda, let me just bring that back. Where we see ourselves in the next 30 days, we'll be wrapping things up, watching these bills and seeing where everything falls with Annapolis and the impact that they may have with not only Frostburg but the local governments. As I said a moment ago, we're going to be heading into what's called the interim period, and this is really where a lot of the work gets done. The 90-day sessions are typically what we call formality. So any work or progress or initiative that we have started with the first quarter, we want to continue that, obviously, for Frostburg. There are some priorities that we are continuing to work with very closely with the governor's office on. And my intention and hope is that we can have some resolution to those priorities for Frostburg completed by the end of sine die. But moving forward, I'll be working closely with both the mayor, Elizabeth, and hopefully you all, just to get a sense on what next year's priorities are needed for Frostburg, so that if there are budget requests or policy needs that are impacting Frostburg directly, we want to make sure that we're getting that information ahead of the curve, as they say, in front of the governor's office and staff. We want to make sure that we're presenting this information to our commissioners and, most importantly, to our Western Maryland delegation, so that we can garner support when necessary. There are a few things that we are working on with Mayor Bob. As I said a moment ago, we have some issues that we're working on to help resolve with the town of Lonacone and Frostburg. Mayor Bob has had some direct conversations with both the governor's staff and with the governor over the last few weeks, along with Elizabeth and myself. I'm sure that we're also going to be working very closely on trying to secure a meeting with the governor's federal relations director, where hopefully we can help position ourselves. If we need any federal support, hopefully the federal director for the governor can help us advance our needs with our congressional delegation for Maryland to hopefully maybe see some federal dollars hopefully coming back to Maryland, but maybe specifically targeting investments on Frostburg's needs. So those are just a handful of things that we are going to be working on post-session. Certainly open to hearing any other updates or any other requests that the council would like for us to be pursuing in Annapolis and potentially even in Washington. At that point in time, I'm going to just stop my screen from sharing and open up to any questions that the council may have for me.
Okay, comes to poll. Anybody? Kevin, you good?
Not good.
Nina?
I think I asked mine.
Nina, you used up all your questions.
Commissioner?
All right, I think we're all good here, unless Liz has anything for you, Rich.
That was very informative.
Yes, Rich, thank you very much. I mean, there's a lot going on.
Thank you very much for the.
A lot going on.
What's that?
I said there's a lot going on. You're covering it very well for us, so I really do appreciate your time and all your efforts, okay?
It's been my pleasure, and I look forward to seeing everyone in the next month or so in person, where we can do the final report.
Very good. All right, you have a good rest of your evening, and take care of the family. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks,
Great,
Rich.
thank you all. Take care.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Who was that?
The little girl's in the box.
Jeez.
Thank you. All right, we have a few items that would be on the council meeting agenda for your consideration. We discussed change order 1 for the Childcare Center last month. We do have it ready for you now. Lydia will talk to you about that.
So in looking into what HRDC's needs will be for the Child Care Center more as we progress with construction, we have consulted with Allegheny County, and we need to do make some changes to our kitchen facility, and we need to add a sidewalk and a dumpster for HRDC. So the change order includes 2 drains for the kitchen and supply room, 3 circuits for the kitchen to add the extra dishwasher that is required, and extend the sidewalk and curbing to make room for the dumpster. The total amount is $9,942. Do you guys have any questions?
We lose the window?
We did lose.
We
the
are
one.
losing a window,
Okay, so-
$1,000 to $1,500.
So we're $1,500 back.
We will
How many
get
more
that back.
windows you want to lose?
You mean like to pay for this week?
We're picking out the inside finishes right now, and we're, the architect picked out a very gray palette that we did not like, so we're switching up some interior finishes and actually able to save some money on still the same kind of material, but not as fancy. So we're saving some money there. And there was an exterior window that didn't show no light into the building. It was purely decorative, and it was $1,500, and we were able to get that canceled once we realized. We thought it was just a circle. We thought it was a city seal on the plans, and then they're like, no, that's a window. Like, okay, my eyes were not good enough to see that. So, but trying to pinch pennies going forward.
Will we have to draw from a different part of the budget to cover the rest, or?
No, this can come out of the ARPA.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, looks like it's all necessary, so. Did you get everything you needed from Mountain View Solar?
I'll have to check.
Okay.
They have been in contact with
Yeah,
Mike
I've
Shelley
seen
and
some of
stuff,
those
so, yeah.
emails, I'm just trying to make sure that everything's there on time.
I know, it would be really nice to have those Mountain View Solar's donating solar panels to the city that'll be installed on the roof. So the building was wired for it, but Mountain View will do the installation and provide the solar panels. So it would be nice if that was complete when we were doing the ribbon cutting.
Yes.
So,
The ribbon cutting will be moved a little bit because this is gonna delay
Yeah,
a bit till May or something.
probably May or June. Maybe we'll do it on election day.
The ribbon cutting? I did forget to mention, it's also a time extension for the snow and weather-related incidents, so that'll move our completion date to June 3rd.
Okay. Closing up.
Yeah.
Okay, Jamie has a planning commission reappointment.
Yes, Karen Crow's 5-year term on the planning commission is expiring on March 21st. So she had indicated that she is willing to serve another 5 years, and staff recommends that she be reappointed to a new 5-year term beginning March 19th, 2024 and expiring March 19th, 2029.
Okay. All right, Jamie.
Okay, that'll be a resolution. Do you want me to talk about that one?
I can cover it.
Okay.
We had a meeting, Liz and I and Aldelia and Troy Donaway had a meeting just yesterday in regards to the memorandum of understanding with Frostburg State University that's been in effect since 2012. And so this year, they had asked about a slight reduction in the funding because of the student population. And so basically I went ahead, since it was, I put the thing together, so I went ahead and granted that. So this year they will be funding us at the rate of $150,000. Moving forward, we're going to probably have some more discussions about the whole funding issue. Frostburg State, just like ACM, just like all of our universities right now, are definitely in a downturn. There's some problems with the recruiting process because the FAFSA has been being redesigned, and folks are having a hard time getting in to find it if they can get their funding, if they can get loans, if they can get grants. So that's holding up every university right now. So what they had hoped to see was either level or slightly better. We won't know. We won't have any good news, unfortunately, for a while, and that good news might not be all that good of news. So we're trying to work as good partners together. They've been a good partner to us, and have always done what they can do to help support us. And moving forward, it may be our time to have to back off a little bit. I know we've got kind of reduction in our staffing right now, and Chief, unless you have any issue with it, I think there's also been a reduction in the amount of workload that we've seen over the last couple of years, obviously from your department side of it. Not that it's gone away, but
Yes, sir.
there has been a reduction.
Meaning there have been fewer like incidents that,
We've had fewer calls for service, and truthfully involving students.
Yeah, right.
And again, we do have unfortunately, a big downturn in the amount of student population we have here. You know, we've got dorms that are sitting empty right now, and that's not helping their bottom line. They have a number of buildings that are being way underutilized right now. So we're just in a crunch time. So moving forward, I'm sure Liz and I are going to have another meeting. We're going to have to just discuss where we go from here. So that'll be something that we'll have to be working through. But we have got the initial MOU. We just got to get it signed off so that you can get a check. So we're working on it next week or two. So.
Yeah, they indicated that they need the MOU that shows for the reduction in funding and a path, or at least the reduction in funding by April 3rd so that they can get the check cut. So we'll be looking for some action from you at your council meeting next week on that to approve that resolution, at least for this year, but hopefully we can figure out a way to encompass agreement going forward as well. So.
Anybody have any questions?
there was, I mean, the funding was projected to go down anyways, right?
No,
No?
no, but it was, the agreement was very strongly correlated to public safety and the city meeting
see.
certain thresholds and stuff, but we weren't, they were giving us the benefit of the doubt, truth be told, over the last 10 years, so, there's some nuances to this, but I think we'll be able to work through it, I think.
I mean, the biggest thing that they don't want to see go away is obviously the operational partnership, you know, so.
Well, it's been pretty successful.
Yeah, so we want to try to keep that and keep the fence without a fence, or control without official control, whatever, so. All right,
Down on Wood and Maple Street.
yeah. Elaine, looks like you're up. Yeehaw.
So we're at that point of the year where we are beginning this initial budget planning for fiscal year '25. You all are very familiar with this as you've been in office for many years. And so there will be many revisions to this first version of the draft budget that we are looking at today. We use the best available information that we have, but as discussed by Rich, as far as state income sources, MOU with Frostburg, there's still a lot, to be determined. So I just want to give you just a brief summary of how we have come to these numbers that are presented today, and how we will continue to work towards making a balanced budget and
considering how we can be the best stewards of the resources that are entrusted to us for the city of Frostburg. There is a very highly condensed summary of the draft budget by fund and department. And as you can see at this point, looking at this condensed summary, we are looking at a budget shortfall in the corporate fund, the water fund, and the sewer fund. Again, these will all be resolved, but that's just the high level. I'm going to give you some comments about some of the assumptions that were used in coming up with this draft budget. So this first version of the budget includes all the departmental requests. So as the staff met with the commissioners, looking at the priorities that they have, there are some unusual special requests that are included in this version, but I wanted you to see the total picture of the desires. In this version of the draft budget, this is also based on the assumption that the real estate tax rate would remain at the current rate of 70 cents per $100 of assessed value, which is higher than the constant yield rate. The constant yield rate is 66.21 cents per $100 of assessed value. There was an increase in the net assessable real estate base. So if the city maintained the current rate as opposed to adopting the constant yield rate, it would be a difference of about $157,000. That will be a discussion that you all will have later as far as what rate you would set. As far as other corporate fund revenues included in the draft budget, the corporate tax revenue is decreasing to reflect the manufacturing exemption that was approved by resolution earlier this year. As far as the Maryland income tax revenue, which is another of the major sources of revenue for the city, the draft budget has a very conservative estimate, as Rich touched on, based on the state revenue projections and seeing a significant slowdown in Maryland withholding and estimated tax payments. Initially, I was going to set the budget estimate a little higher than fiscal year 24. I ended up just keeping it level right now. The Maryland income tax revenue that the city received, the actual last fiscal year, was about $725,000. This year's budget's at $640,000. It's just unknown at this point how that's trending. I'll show you one of the slides that I was representing. So this came from the Bureau of Revenue's presentation. You can go on the website and you can see from their March meeting. So this is a look at the withholding, and you can see how it has shrunk. All of that filters through to the city. So as the state receives less,
We get less.
we get less. Same with estimated tax payments. You can see the trend. So that's why in this version of the draft budget, it's a very conservative number. But we'll continue to evaluate based on, information we get from the state. Highway use tax, we are projecting an increase. We get a letter from Department of Transportation giving us projections every so many months. And the legislature has reinstated the highway use tax revenue, so that's the number we're using right now. We have pulled down the FSU MOU amount in the draft budget, and as the mayor continues to work with FSU, we'll have a better idea of what that number should be by the time we get to the budget ordinance. That is, in this version of the budget decreased from $200,000 to $50,000, just as a working number. Project reimbursement revenue, that reflects reimbursements the city expects to receive for the roundabout project and some of the POS recreation grants. And any line item that you see that references special revenue in all of the funds, that is tied to ARPA projects. We have a separate list of that. For purposes of the draft budget and compensation to employees, this version would include a $1 per hour increase for most full-time employees, It also reflects the goal to transition from earned comp time to the option of all paid overtime beginning in January. And then we're working in public safety based on 14 certified officers in the coming year and having consistent staffing levels on all the other departments. We would also be including the transition credit that we're going to be getting for the officers who transitioned from the existing plan that we were in state retirement to LEOPS. So this is the first year that that $31,000 credit is reflected in net pension expense. For purposes of estimating insurance costs, we're awaiting quotes on health insurance and all the other insurance, but for this version, we're looking at a 10% increase in health insurance. As you recall, last year, the city faced a 45% premium increase. So we're being optimistic in this, like I say, in this version that this year's increase would not be as much, but Elizabeth and I will be talking with the broker later this month to try and get some more information on that. For the property, general liability, professional liability, and auto rates, at this point, I'm just looking at projecting rates increasing 10 to 15%. But again,
Those rates are really going up.
we will try and get more definite rates for the next version of the budget. We're also going to have some of our buildings appraised for insurance purposes. That could have a positive or a negative impact on, our insurance rates, but that is an effort for the city to make sure that we are insuring things for the right value. And of course, we'll be adding childcare buildings, so that will be an addition to the policy. On the utility side, we're projecting at this point continuing to maintain the water, sewer, water surcharge, and CSO surcharge rates, and basing that on consumptions of water and sewer continuing into the next year as we have seen in the past year, with the exception that we are not budgeting anything for sales to loan accounting. And
Because we don't know the outcome of.
And the expectation at this point is that they would not, we're not counting on
Yeah.
that as a revenue source. The one increase that I have included in this version of the budget is having the quarterly garbage rate go from $47 a quarter to $48 a quarter. Basically from $15.67 per month to $16 a month. That is the one item that I did round up, and that will be your call. And we've also budgeted for the expected transition from quarterly utility billing to monthly billing for residential customers beginning in January. And as we discussed before, there would be a slight increase in administrative related costs, postage, envelopes, paper, e-check fees. So we built that in. When we evaluate our units, we call them Frostburg dwelling equivalents each February for the surcharges. In the residential area, it was very consistent this year. There was only a net increase of 4 units of increase. When we look at our monthly customers, however, there's a decrease of 51 units. So significant decrease in consumptions there. So that pulls down the surcharge revenue just a little bit. So I did include a table of the projected ARPA projects that are included in the FY25 budget. Some of these, through budget amendments in the fiscal year 24 budget, will be changed. For example, we anticipated the $500,000 payment towards the fire department ladder truck to be happening in fiscal year 24. So it's still in the 24 budget, but we feel confident that's not going to happen before June 30, so it's in the 25 budget, and we'll resolve that through budget amendments later this spring. Same with the plow truck. It's included in the 24 budget, we'll pull it out, and it'll be included in 25. So you can see the projects listed. These are based on the priority list, the expectation of what will actually be incurred in this year, and you'll see the total by fund. The other large item in the sewer fund is always the CSO projects. And based on a discussion with Hayden and looking at the expected timing of these projects. How much is anticipated to be finished by June of 2025, and some of the revenue sources. So when you look in the sewer fund budget, the CSO sub-budget, you'll see that is where the 4.2 million approximately of CSO project expense comes in. As we have more discussions with MDE and have a better understanding of how the loan and loan forgiveness part of that funding package works, then we will have a better idea of how much we will need to be paying out of the city cash from the CSO surcharge and how much will be part of that debt package. So that will be a revision in the draft budget as well later. And then finally, among the highlights, I just listed some of those unusual items that I said were, some departmental requests. I indicated where they're reflected in particular line items so you can see where they are. So we have an AmeriCorps stipend requested in community development, having an intern again with Public Works. In the street department, there was a request for consideration of purchase of equipment that would help clear sidewalks of snow, and some parking lot snow removal costs. In the rec department, some of the POS projects are there: Armory Gym restroom project, City Place kitchen project, and also a large project at Glendenning Park, and also purchase of another piece of equipment for $30,000. Within the water fund, we're looking at additional meter reading equipment, as we do anticipate moving to monthly utility billing. We need to have some backup meter reading capabilities, just because it will be important that we don't get behind on the meter reading schedule. So that's one request in that department. Continuing work on Centennial Hill water line, potentially some other work in other areas of the town. And for the sewer, consideration of pump station work at Village Parkway. So the draft budget is available on the website for you all, line by line detail. I don't feel the need to go through each of those with you now, but certainly I solicit input on those, any questions you may have. And again, this is the first version, and we'll make many changes in the meantime, but we definitely need input going forward, in particular addressing the issue of the tax rate, utility rates, and hotel motel requests. I'll turn that over to Elizabeth.
While we're still just on budget, I think to talk about utility rates, I know last month I said it's our recommendation to wait until next year to do the any changes, structural changes to the utility rate. So it's more what we're looking at next year. Without getting into the weeds too much, the water surcharge has been historically used for debt service, and the water rates have paid for maintaining our distribution system and operating at the water treatment plant. We're coming to the point that where debt service is going to be diminishing quickly, and we're also at a place that there's deferred maintenance and within our distribution system. The water treatment plant's in great shape, but within our distribution system itself, we need to be replacing lines faster than we have been. Be proactive rather than reactive. So we don't need to, in my opinion, we don't need to collect what we've been collecting in surcharge for future maintenance of Piney Dam and the springs. It's too much money. So restructuring the rates that we're collecting some in reserves to do what needs to be done to maintain the water sources and pumping it here and getting it here, but then also lowering that amount that residents are contributing to and upping the amount to just take care of our distribution system. That in the end, the average customer isn't going to notice a difference in their overall bill, but it more operationally meets our needs come the end of this decade. Additionally, it's extra confusing because the county buys water off of us. They only pay for certain parts. They don't pay to take care of our distribution system, except for the main that carries the water through town. And there's a public service commission ruling that tells us specifically how we set our rates. So if we change our rate structure, we need to make sure that the county is agreeable to that, so that all parties are happy to walk away from the public service commission ruling, that we can, be agreeable to a new rate. So water's complicated in that regard, but there's been a lot of conversation and work to get to a place that we can, I think, have a better rate structure that better meets the needs now that the 40-year debt on Piney Dam is getting close to being paid off. So that's kind of like the big goal between this year and next year. Sewer, unfortunately, a lot of it is out of our hands in terms of what Cumberland is going to charge the county, what Cumberland's going to charge LaVale, that's going to charge the county, that's then going to charge us. With the new pump station going online, then Cumberland having to treat more wastewater because of their storage. And I don't think any increases are projected this year, but beyond that, we may see some sewer rate increases. Garbage. It's pretty straightforward. Pretty straightforward that everything costs more.
I mean, even private, sometimes you see the fuel surcharge, they're building them now. Burg tells you it's a fuel surcharge, WM just raised the rates, so.
Yeah, our trash service went up $200 a month.
So again, not recommending any utility rate changes this year except for the slight increase in the garbage rate to just make that on the monthly bill a round number. And that gets a little bit of money going into the reserves on the garbage rate where you're below your desired fund balance. So that helps a little in that regard as well. Tax rate. How do you feel about the 70 cents, keeping it at 70 cents? A little off the cuff math, if you lived in a $200,000 home, for every half a cent you reduce it, half a penny, it's $10 off the tax bill.
And we've had a lot of construction, both residential and commercial, that has helped to increase the base. I can't imagine, I know people's assessments have gone up, but they haven't skyrocketed. So I don't think keeping the rate the same is really going to affect a lot of the residential people. It's going to affect some, obviously, but not.
Berkeley Springs Instruments, the expansion at Sierra Hygiene are big ones. Every new home that's being built falls under the RETSA agreement, so you're not going to see a real increase in tax revenue off of those for 10 years. So,
Like I say, if we can look at the water numbers once loans paid, and they come up with a proactive, what do you want to call a proactive maintenance plan?
asset management.
Asset management. It'll take Hayden 15 or 20 minutes to figure out how many pipes we're going to replace. But
All of them.
yeah, and that's unfortunately you're not that far off, and we're going to have to start doing it, or we're going to have. Anytime we have a leak, how many posts do we got to buy? Why did they turn the water off? Oh, yeah, we had nothing else to do. We decided to turn the water off.
There's not a lot of sympathy for a disruption in water service.
No, and they're a customer, and we shouldn't disrupt them, so we need to get on that. We definitely need to get on that. Everybody okay?
Yeah.
We all know what we need to do going forward.
Okay, something a little more lighthearted is
please.
hotel motel tax request.
Elaine, thank you.
Yes.
I assembled all of the requests for this year. I'll just kind of, alright, so, there we go. Is that more better?
That's more
More
better. And we use the most proper English here.
We speak good.
My 7-year-old told me that I should not say more better, and I was like, Lydia tells me the same thing. But I like it.
You're just testing your children to see if they're paying attention.
So Rob and I always like to say library.
I think Willow even said, Mom, you should say this instead. I'm like, oh, okay, great.
Again, you're gonna have no problem.
Okay, so Frostburg first, notable there is their request is $5,000 less than last year. So their requests have stayed flat or decreased over the last several years as they are becoming more self-sufficient and able to get grant funding and membership dollars. Car Club, same request. FSU Cultural Events up $1,000. Derby Day the same. Garden Club the same. Dog Park down $2,000. She's specifically requesting that money for benches to be placed at the dog park. Her request, which is attached to this, does include the spec on the benches to match. She likes the ones we used on Main Street.
Oh,
So.
cool.
The ones there. Museum, same. Arts Council went up $500 to $2,000. Aryan Band, you're required to give them $500 by charter provision. Palace is the same at $5,000. The Appalachian Festival up $500. Lamppost, same. Oops, sorry. Mountain Maryland Trails, the same. Thrasher Carriage Museum, the same. Savage Mountain Punk Fest up $500 to $2,000. He just had a very successful fundraiser at City Place, so that's pretty cool. FSU TV 3 is up $500 to $19.99. That's for licensing to live stream the meetings. Center for Literary Arts, same at $1,500. Did not receive a request from the railroad. WFWM, same at $1,500. Camp Hope, same at $1,500.
Weston's anything? Should be the same.
He did not send me anything, and he has not requested his money from this past year, so I kind of thought he did not need money.
He forgot.
Okay.
Yeah.
He
So,
has other strengths.
No, it's a bus, because we're paying Bill now to drive the bus around, the fuel, and we're gonna have to put front tires on it here sooner than later.
so he hasn't requested the $20,000 he was allocated, the railroad was allocated last year.
He didn't know when, because he got the 10 right up against the beginning of the budget. He didn't know whether or not he had to collect it this year. He mentioned that to me, and I forgot to say something.
Okay. They can request it at any time after July 1, and if they do not request the funding, we cut them the check at the end of May.
Okay.
So,
If you added that in, where's that leave us?
if you added 20,000 and that puts you at 125,
Right.
which is about 7,000 more than last year.
And what did we estimate in is,
140.
I thought it was about 140.
So typically, let me just
You
get
gotta
through.
finish, go ahead.
Yeah, Habitat for Humanity, Restore. We have some representatives from Habitat here. If you wanted them to speak, I'm sure they'd be happy to. But they're looking to supplement, they're looking to open a Restore here in Frostburg. And they're asking for the first year's rent so that they don't have to take that out of their home building funds. Frostburg Little League has requested $2,000 for a portable pitching mound down at the field by the park and rec shop. I talked to Brian about that. He didn't really have an issue with it, but just operationally, he'd want to have some conversations about how and where it's stored and kept and so forth. But I don't think that's anything insurmountable. And Mountain City.
That's more better.
The Mountain City Center for the Arts requested any amount of funding that you desire to give for their Beyond the State program, which I take to be somewhat of a scholarship program to support students. Beyond the stage, not beyond the stage. Beyond the stage program to support students taking lessons there that may not otherwise be able to. And I lost that, sorry. There we go.
And we're done.
So that's total requests.
Any thoughts on Mountain City? What do you think would be a?
It's, I mean,
How much is the tax revenue?
The draft budget has an estimate of 155,000.
So that's not a whole lot to play with.
no,
If-
so
if it's-
Because we use some of it to fund our own
Right, yeah.
Parks and Rec programs.
You want to throw 1,000 for Mountain City?
my only concern with that is hotel motel tax has typically been used for funding that beautifies the community or otherwise draws visitors, draws visitors to the community or otherwise improves the appearance of the community for visitors.
This is too individualized.
I mean, I kind of agreeing with Liz. This is like a private business asking for money.
On the other hand, it's a scholarship for students, and then they end up performing in the whole storybook hall. Sorry, I'm really passionate about this. So, I mean, in that way, it can be justified that way. They do add to a whole big tourism thing in our city.
And I mean, not everything on here is super touristy. Camp Hope, they fix up houses, it improves the pride in the community, yeah. Little League, maybe we'll get the next MLB star off that. I don't know. So, totally up to you.
Dog park even could be seen.
People come from all over to use
Oh, to
that
use
dog
it,
park.
They do. My pastor and his wife had their first date there. They were driving from different places.
Well, there you
Yeah,
go.
they met at the dog park. Yeah. I'd like to give them something.
I mean, almost to say, to Donnie's point, and again, to say we want to fund a private entity, but you want to say scholarship for storybook training, something along those lines, because we need L's, we need the help for the event. I mean, that could be in parentheses, but we do get on television once in a while, so I mean, that's obviously a major bonus. You want to specify it?
Can you make it something that ends in $1 so we get an even number there?
There we go.
901, 1001.
Going once, twice, 1,001.
1,001.
Okay. And the railroad's gonna put in a 20,000.
Yeah, I'll tell him to go ahead and send Elaine an email. You ladies want to give us anything? Well, you can.
We're just here because it's the first time that you've received a request from Habitat for Humanity, and we thought there might be questions. Happy to give you an update on where we are.
Take 2 minutes. You want to bed?
Do you want me here? There?
You're fine. Just
As we indicated in the grant request, we have a specified location. It's the garage-looking building next to Domino's. Brandon Reese, the landlord, is renovating the facilities for us and donating a lot of contractor supplies. We have let the word out to the community of what our intention is to open the store, and we have 47 people who have opted of it. It was donated to us at the last minute. We don't think that there's going to be any problem getting materials. Habitat stores run well, are traditionally big money makers. The Habitat store in Grantsville is more of a household goods kind of a place. They net $200,000 a year. What this is going to do is empower our local Habitat chapter to build more houses. I'm excited about the fact that it's also going to increase our ability to provide repairs for older Americans aging in place, which I think is a big plus for us as a community. It helps to keep our residences in good shape, helps property values, and I feel, we all feel, the chapter voted unanimously to pursue this project. I think that the Habitat store is going to be a nice community hub for volunteers in the Frostburg area. We have a lot of people who are in the older age group who don't have a lot to do, and being able to go somewhere during the day, see some other people, do some good, have some fun, I think it's going to be a major plus for us. I don't anticipate that we're going to be coming back and asking you for more money next year. I say that because we probably won't. If there's a pandemic, we might. But it's not traditionally something that we would need. I think right now we have probably $9,000 worth of stuff stored in Donnie's upstairs. Thank you, Donnie. Thank you, Donnie. I believe it's about half of the size of the second floor of the Crescent building. About 9 people moved all that stuff. It was, we're trying to tell everybody else, if you have a place in your garage, keep it until we're ready to move it. But those were 2. We had a house and that we emptied, and some really high-end, a lot of new furniture still in the box with tax on it. So we hope that you will grant our request, and we are waiting to give those head nods and before we make any more announcements to the community. But Kathy and I walk out of here feeling good. We are going to start selling some of the stuff that we have gathered on Facebook starting tomorrow to up our monies that are coming in.
And to make more space.
Yeah.
Every day.
Because Donnie's gonna start charging you rent.
Hey, easy one.
I got some chairs out of the deal.
Okay.
We're taking care of that.
As long as you're working a deal.
One of our goals is also to reduce your refuse to the dump.
Sure.
When the students leave, they leave a lot of good stuff
They
on
do,
the
yeah,
streets.
yeah.
And if we can reach out to the landlord ahead of time and say, look, tell your students to just leave it inside, we'll get it. It'll save you a lot as well.
No, just on side, and Donnie's too here, since we're got some properties. There's something, I don't know if Habitat would be interested in, or they have any ties to, is the mattress and box spring recycling folks.
We haven't researched that. One of the things we are trying to do is to find, every month, have a recycled item of the month. For instance, crayons. If you gather up all the used crayons in the world, you can ship them to Crayon and they will recycle them. So in August, I'm thinking we should be asking people to bring their old crayons when they're buying the new crayons for school. And the motivation is to decrease what's going in the garbage.
Sure.
And to increase the traffic in and out of the store. If the item changes every month, people will come into the store, see an item, say, oh, I'm going to come back with my crayons and I'm going to buy that thing that I thought I was going to maybe
Well,
not buy.
the reason I bring up, because Mr. Beeman had the mattress store down on Red Hill. He would take the old ones and send them out to be recovered. And I mean, there's a couple plants in the South to do this, and Symbol Mattress is one of the companies who actually sells to Goodwill. So if you go to Goodwill and you buy a mattress box spring, it'll have a tag on it. They're recovers. And so I actually was talking to the manager, and I said, well, then you probably want mattress and box springs to replace these, because no, we can't take them.
We will research that though.
If you would, because I mean, when the kids move out, I mean,
It's a big thing.
but they take up a lot of room in the landfill.
Yep.
you know, I mean, a box is a box. It's just, you know, but I mean, that would be really helpful, because when we have citywide pickup, that could be, if we had them could be able to bring a trailer truck in, repository, what's his name, Mike Rowe on Dirty Jobs. He did an episode on it, and they just bring a trailer truck in and it's loaded, and away they go with them. So if you could be the contact for that for town, that would be great.
It's an excellent idea, and I see it fitting well in
Yes,
hands
yes.
to build a more of a culture of recycling.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
It's important, and it saves everybody money.
Okay.
In your dog benches, Trex decking right now has a deal, if you can gather up 1,000 pounds of market bags,
Mm-hmm.
they'll give you.
That's a lot of bags.
But they'll give you a bench made out of recycled plastic, something, you know, we would be keeping in mind.
Right, right.
It's hard to recycle those bags. We save them when we get a lot, and the things at the grocery stores are always
Yeah,
filled,
they're always
and
full.
You can't get them in there.
Right, right.
So, we see the Habitat store filling that gap.
Sure, I think it's great. All right, so you want 5 nods? Is that what you were asking for?
I just want to walk out of here happy. Am I walking out of here happy?
Should we do it all at the same time? I'll nod. Do you guys want to nod? There you go.
Do you have an estimated,
Thank you so much.
do you have an estimated date for opening?
We're looking at June, possibly July. It depends on the actual renovations that occur in the space. I don't know if you remember, there's 4 garage door type openings. The 2 in the middle are going to become glass and a door, and the inside of the building has to be drywalled and a heating system put in. So,
If we do a soft opening in June, we're happy to do a grand opening in conjunction with your Derby Days.
Okay. All right, ladies.
Okay.
How about it?
thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you, Kip. All right, budget closed?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, I did email this to you all previously, but we did receive, we've talked about this before, and it's never really gone anywhere. So I encouraged Jess to write a new email, or a new letter to you, requesting long-term leasing of 1 to 2 parking spaces behind their home on 22 South Water Street. It's a small city parking lot. Some of the spaces are, well, Barb Armstrong owns the building next door, next to City Place, and I don't know the history, but she owns her 2 parking spots. The Grapes purchased the old fire station building. They do not own their parking spaces, so they've requested the ability to lease 1 or 2 of the parking spaces from the city. In the past, I've come to you with a bigger plan to do some kind of permit parking there or not. Whether you want to explore that or not, or explore just this consideration, it doesn't, I have no strong opinions either way. I do think that the seminarians did, Grapes family made, you know, a big investment in that building that would probably be a problem otherwise.
request before.
Several years ago, yeah. So, Armstrong's owned their spaces, and 7 years ago, when we did the mural on the, 8 years ago, 9 years, I don't know, many years ago when we did the mural on the side of Nate Emery's building, part of that agreement to lease the billboard mural space was to give him a parking spot, which his mom uses, that lives in that building. So,
Well, I think the lack of off-street parking is a big one for them. Because that does seem like kind of a major thing.
But, well, here's something to consider.
Yeah.
Those 2 parking lots there have 25 spots between them. Is that about right? Maybe a few more. There are 27 apartment units that circle those two parking lots.
27 units?
27 units that do not have parking.
Huh.
So, if we do it for 1, are we doing it for all?
I think this came up before. I think that might be why.
So that's
Yeah.
something to
remember,
think about.
I remember this.
so,
Yeah.
and a little backstory of why it came to a head again. The city wasn't really policing the lot because the signage in the lot was not consistent. wasn't really a big deal until, because it's not metered, it just had no overnight parking. It's not a big deal until it snows. Parks and Rec guys want to get the whole lot cleared out. So this winter with the snow, Brian went to Nick. Nick was like, well, I don't like policing it because of the way it's signed. Any ticket we write is going to get thrown out in court because it's confusing. So Brian and Nick worked with Shane, and they put a sign on every spot that says no overnight parking. So that's where this came to be again. So these 3 spots down here are for Somerset Trust during the day. They patrol their own spots because I parked there on a Saturday afternoon and they gave me their own citation. And I was like, well, how about that?
Does this get solved once we build our parking lot? Partially solved?
So
Are we gonna have
Well,
overnight parking
I mean,
there?
honestly, the Grapes, they own that parking lot right there,
This one.
which, I mean, I feel bad for, like, I understand their thing, but my thing is, and I own one of those buildings that has the 20, one of the 27 apartments, and if we're gonna let somebody else park there, I want permit to park there too for my tenants, and I think we're opening up a big can of worms.
I remember this discussion.
Yeah, it's sounding really
I mean,
familiar.
What's gonna happen is we're gonna have to give it to everybody, and then there's not gonna be a spot there for anybody else to park in. Because there'll be cars parked there all day.
And then the intention, because the former city lot did allow overnight parking. So with permit. So the intention with the new city lot here that will be much larger is that we would offer overnight permit parking. Again. At this lot.
Just that section there.
Well, somewhere within this lot. And we would probably confine the overnight parking people to one row so that snow removal is easier, that they're not all hodgepodge throughout the lot.
So you just tell them, be patient.
We're just gonna kick it down the road.
I mean, that parking lot should be done in a year's time.
Better be before that.
Before Storybook Holiday.
Yeah.
Before the cruise in.
Dave, how many,
Yeah.
do you think space wise, how many?
It'll probably, if we really stretched it, it'd be like 68, but
Yeah,
chances
I know
are
it's-
with everything we're putting into it, it'll be closer to 40.
Yeah, it's already lined. It's 40.
No, I mean, that's it, I mean, to Donnie's point, I mean, if you got one space allocated for each apartment,
And I mean, maybe not everybody would do it, but my worry is once word gets out, and all those people know that they can have a spot for overnight parking for their tenants, everybody's gonna want it, and then there's not gonna be any parking for the customers during the day. We have a hard enough time on Main Street.
But if it's only overnight, then there would be space during the day, right?
They're gonna get up and move their car.
Yeah.
Is that-
Yeah.
if you're paying for space, it's your space.
Yeah, you don't wake up on Sunday morning after a fun night out and think, oh, I'm going to move my car, so.
Unless you're gonna get ticketed, then you will.
That's, no offense, Nick, but that hasn't happened in a long time.
If you can stretch that to maybe like 54 spaces.
That's already designed.
Just, take a shingle stretcher, you get a parking lot stretcher.
Hey, I wanted it all spaces tarmac. We had to make it look nice.
It's,
He's in the brutalist school of architecture.
But do you think, hey Don, just, I mean, just we're just talking here and talking. If you said that you say you'd have 4 spaces and Somerset has 3, right?
During the day.
What's that leave us in there then?
I wasn't
10, 12.
following your math, I'm sorry, there's
But
one,
it's only during the day, right?
one,
For
two,
Somerset.
three,
For
four,
Somerset.
five.
Well, she
But, yeah.
got ticketed on
It's not
Saturday.
like you can't expect if somebody parks there overnight, that they're gonna get up and move by 8 o'clock in the morning when Somerset comes in.
Yeah.
So this spot here with the black car is reserved for the billboard. And then these two spots are Barb Armstrong's. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, plus the 3 Somerset Trust spots in the upper lot.
And then by Clatter, there are what, 3 or 4?
10.
Yeah, the lower lot's 10.
1, 2, 3,
That's
4,
17.
5,
But I mean,
10.
across from Somerset, there are
Oh,
3 or 4.
Oh yeah, you're
Like the
right, there's
short
3 more right there.
the short stop.
Yeah, behind Clatter.
But there's I guess there's apartments above Clatter too, right?
Well, that's counting,
Yeah.
counting them as the 20.
Okay.
So there's 20 total between both lots. This one gets a lot of in and out usage.
Yeah, it does.
This one used to have Dr. Tan's employees.
That sign is still up, isn't it? Or did they finally take it down?
Yeah. No, I don't know. Like,
Are they still there?
There's somebody in there.
They're sort of
Okay.
paying.
Yeah,
There hasn't been any,
Gonzaga's.
I haven't seen anybody in there in a while. Like,
Guns.
yeah.
It looks okay. I don't know.
Okay, anyway, so the top number like 20. So if you get 27 units, that doesn't make 27
No,
units.
then you're gonna have to pull over into that other parking lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
I mean, we could charge like $1,000 a parking space.
Make it self-selecting.
a month.
Yeah, man.
What,
So on that budget, sir.
what does Somerset, what do they pay us?
Nothing.
It was part of the agreement to keep that little,
But the problem is, even if you do charge something, like somebody buys a parking spot there, who's gonna enforce if somebody else
if somebody else
parks in
parks
their
there.
spot?
Yeah. Huh.
They're gonna be calling Nick to come have the car towed.
Well, see, then we can make some revenue on it.
I mean, I don't care what we do, I'm just saying, we're opening up a big can of worms. If,
I did do some outreach the last time, and I forget how many people wrote back.
Oh, you
I
did.
remember this,
Yeah.
That was way too long ago for
Yeah.
my brain, it seems, but
and I feel like that's why we didn't do any of it.
Yes, I mean, even the old permits, we used to do monthly permits, $20.
yeah.
And they were monthly, which that's a pain. You know?
And I think the reason Barb got 2 spots there is, one, I think didn't she buy that off the city, the building?
Yes.
And then she had also bought the building that was the other parking lot and tore it down.
There's some horse trading.
Yes, so that was part of that agreement.
Yeah, she'd make a pretty sizable investment, so 2 parking spaces seems very cheap.
Yeah. Just, maybe we need to wait till the new law gets in and then see where we're at then.
Cause right here, figure what Tom's built for sign is.
Tom's, there's 9, that one above Wholesome Harvest, there's 2, there's one above Dave Robertson's. There's 3 above the Princess that aren't used, and one of them's used right now. There's 2 above the other building on the corner, there's 5 in Fran's old building, there's 1 in my building, there's 1 in the old Lorenzo's building. And that's just that part of the street, then you get, 2 above Clatter, 1 above the other building next to Clatter, and that's as far as I counted. There's other buildings there that don't have parking too, so.
So they do have off-street parking, it's just not contiguous to their apartment.
It's down here.
They cross the street.
And I mean, almost every day when I walk to work, their car's parked right in front of the building. Like I get it, like I said, I'd wanna park right next to my building too, but walk a half a block, it's not a killer.
Alright, just table,
Yeah.
all in favor?
Um,
Basically worded that considering that there are more tenants without off-street parking than there are available parking spaces, we can't make a special exception for any resident.
Well, I mean, that's the other thing with them, because I mean, you move on to even just,
They own it.
As opposed to renting.
And I get it, they've made a sizable investment
Yeah,
in
they
that
did.
building, but I've made a
They
sizable
should've put
investment
it
in
in
my
there.
building still.
Do you wanna sell them 2 parking spaces?
let's make an offer. What's the parking space worth? Mr. Bailey?
It's not cheap, I can guarantee you that.
Huh.
You have been, are they responsible for the maintenance of the parking
Yep.
garage then?
Yeah. I mean, they're already offering to do maintenance, right? 'Cause
Yeah, I
said-
think they
yeah.
even said that in their letter, that we wouldn't have to plow those, they would take care of that.
Can you maybe want to answer them, we're exploring the possibility of a sale of 20 by whatever to them for the 2 spaces? And see what the response is. If they would do it.
Think long and hard about this.
No, I
Yeah,
know.
think long and hard, because what happens when you have to go in and repave that parking lot?
Well, I mean, that's just
And
it.
I mean, are you gonna pave just part of it and leave the other part
No,
looking
they'd
like
be-
shit?
They'd be responsible
Well,
for their square
what would
footage.
happen with the Armstrong spaces then?
Exactly. There's lots of questions to be asked before we just jump to a conclusion.
I mean, in their sale agreement, that could be put in there.
But again, you're gonna offer them the sale of 2 lots, are you gonna go offer every single building owner out there enough, purchase of a lot for every apartment they have?
Need to answer them something.
This is kind of the reason we talked with Mike Joy. He's already got a lot behind his building there, but he wanted us to let him have his people park in the other lot so he could rent those spaces out to St. Mike's, And then, I mean, it's way, I think we need to think long and hard before we make any decisions.
I can pull up documents of how the city transferred the spaces to Barb Armstrong and get that together for you and just send that to you for your consideration. I'll put it back on the agenda next month.
I don't think repaving would be a problem, because when the time comes that the city wants to repave the lot, you reach out to Barb Armstrong and to the San Marino Graves, if we do sell those lots, and say, we're gonna pave the parking lot. If you want your spaces paved, it'll cost this much. If not, we'll just leave your spaces.
But that's what I'm saying though, when paving goes bad, it goes bad, and are you gonna,
If you don't pay for it, you lose them. We have the right to reclaim
Ah,
them.
okay, yeah, we could do that, yeah.
I mean, that would be the only way in the agreement to do it, because as Donnie says, you're not gonna cut the blacktop all the way around it. It sits there for 40
They just do a
years.
nice little curve.
Yeah, well, it's gonna rut out and break up, and it's not gonna be, so you're gonna have to, that would have to be part of the agreement, that it's not a question of whether you pay for it. If you don't, you lose the property.
oh, that's just rough.
All right, any other discussion here? We got some reminders. Whoever hasn't filed needs to file.
I filed.
You file?
I filed.
Okay,
I still need to.
okay. Everybody else is good? And election day on June 4th.
Budget ordinance will be introduced in April. Arbor Day is gonna be celebrated on Arbor Day. Friday, April 26th, at the post office. They've agreed to allow the Bradford pear trees to be removed, and we'll get some native tree to plant there, and there's gonna be children singing a tree song at my request.
Yeah.
at 10:30 a.m. on the
Hayden
26th.
will not be there.
It's gonna
Hayden
brainwash you.
will be required to be in attendance. And,
Indoctrination. Of the youth.
Children should not be learning to love trees.
okay,
Do we also have anything?
Ribbon cutting for the fishing pier will be sometime in April. Emily will reach out to you guys for that if you want to be there.
April, sometime in April.
Should we bring our fishing pole?
If you want to.
Get one of the branches that fell down and
just get your
put some
license
string on it.
first. Probably old enough for your
Everybody good?
lifetime.
I'm gonna take us off here. We adjourn?
Yep.